Welcome to the CFO Show. I'm your host, Melissa Howitson, CFO of Venna. In this episode, we sit down with Troy Anderson, Chief Financial Officer of Kelly, to explore the defining moments, decisions, and lessons from his remarkable career in finance. Troy is a global leader in talent solutions and is a proven finance executive with a track record of driving growth and transformation at companies like Universal Technical Institute, Conduit, and Xerox, leading major acquisitions, capital raises, and business turnarounds. At Kelly, Troy is focused on advancing the company's financial strategy and supporting its mission to connect people to meaningful work. Troy, welcome to the CFO Show.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm happy to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity.
For those who may not be familiar with Kelly, can you tell us a bit about the company and what it is that you do?
Well, Kelly invented the staffing industry. We're a global workforce solutions and talent provider, about $4 billion in revenue, public company, been around for almost 80 years now. And we specialize in a number of different areas in the staffing space: manufacturing, science, engineering, technology. We're the largest provider of substitute teachers in the United States. And we have a number of other talent management solutions, managed service provider platform, recruitment process outsourcing, where we help manage companies that have large contingent workforces or need to flex their workforce management capabilities, typically larger, global type of companies. We have a very diverse portfolio of offerings and solutions and really deep client relationships.
Wow, 80 years. Talk about a durable business. That's a pretty impressive amount of time. Now, you yourself have also had a pretty remarkable career journey. Can you talk a bit about that journey and what were some of those pivotal moments that led you on this path to CFO?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's over 35 years, so I'll try and keep it brief. I started in public accounting, pretty traditional, came out of school with accounting and finance undergrads. I was in a smaller regional firm, and one of my first pivotal moments was a few years in, realizing it would benefit me to have, at the time, Big Six type experience, larger firm, more credible firm on my resume. So I did have an opportunity to join Coopers & Lybrand at the time, now part of PwC. So that was one pivotal moment. I moved into industry after about 5 years. I was also pursuing my MBA at the time. Again, sort of another pivotal moment. And the industry was the telecom industry, which was going through an amazing amount of change at that time. This is the mid 90s. So the local and long distance carriers were being deregulated, entering each other's markets. The internet was exploding at the time. Wireless was exploding at the time. I know I'm dating myself here, but so it was a really exciting industry to be a part of. And so I had a number of different financial roles in companies there, MCI and WorldCom, and then Nextel and Sprint. I went through major transactions, mergers, MCI and WorldCom, and then Sprint and Nextel, and was able to succeed, not only retain my roles, but succeed as those transactions completed and take on bigger roles in the combined company. And finishing with Sprint as a director of corporate FP&A for the full $20+ billion company. Then I moved into business services, Affiliated Computer Services. It's a public company, $6 billion public company with a who's who of client names. And again, global delivery centers, and was under a transaction essentially from the day I got there as far as potentially being sold. It was a closely held company and eventually was sold to Xerox. But my role there enabled me to now take really a full business. I was a business partner and take a full business point of view, full P&L life cycle of all the way from early sales, lead development, all the way through contract maturation and customer relationship management, as well as the finance function, pricing and contracting and accounting and FP&A. So it was really a mini CFO kind of role. So that was a big change for me. And with the Xerox transaction, I was able to move into an investor relations role and really get exposure at that at corporate Xerox view. Conduit was spun off from Xerox. Basically, the company they bought was turned around and spun back out again. We had to raise $2 billion in debt and stand up all the public company infrastructure. And I led the finance function, reporting to the CFO, and was part of the CEO inner circle at that point. And then that really then a few years there, and that set me up for my first true public company CFO role with Universal Technical Institute, and was really an amazing journey, 5-year journey there. We developed a strategic plan. We endured COVID. So in my first 6 months, I had to raise capital, develop a new relationship with a new CEO, shut our business down and start it all over again, and then execute on a strategic plan that ultimately more than doubled the company and revenue, and significantly increased profitability and market cap. Took a $100 million market cap company to over $1 billion. And then more recently, just a year ago, I joined Kelly. I had my 1-year anniversary last week, and everything was great at UTI. And but I had an itch for, well, is there something else I might want to do here before I call it a day with my career? And the opportunity at Kelly came along, and it just really leveraged so many things had done previously, both at UTI and Conduent, and some of my earlier experiences. The global name and brand, and a lot of transformation opportunity, which had been a significant part of what I'd done both at Conduent and UTI, both from a finance perspective as well as from a business perspective. And so it's been a great year since I've been here, and now we have a new CEO here as well, just last month. And so year one, we made a lot of progress on the finance transformation side, and now year two and beyond, we start the new journey with new leadership.
Wow. So I can tell that you really do shy away from a challenge as they come your way. That's that's great. It sounds like you see an opportunity, you put up your hand, you get in there and find a way through. And it's led to some amazing doors opening up for you. You've moved industries. When you're doing that and thinking about those moves between industries, has that been hard? And what's driven some of those changes in industries, even this most recent one into workforce solutions?
It wasn't as much targeting the industry per se. It was more the opportunities from a career perspective. Telecom was big. I was in the Washington, D.C. metro area, Maryland and Northern Virginia. And telecom was big there. The first company I joined was MCI Communications, which was headquartered in Northern Virginia. Nextel was headquartered there. So it was really more the opportunity. But MCI was, when I was coming out of the MBA program, they would hire out of, it was University of Maryland, and they did have some hiring there. So it was a company that attracted me. I actually joined a different telecom company previously, one of the local carriers based in the area. Turned out to be great. As I said, the industry was going through just a massive amount of change in innovation. But the way those companies tended to be run was more functional. So engineering and customer service and the sales teams and the like. And so that full P&L transition I mentioned was important to me. How do I get into really running a business, having more that end-to-end responsibility? And so again, the opportunity just materialized. I mean, I looked at other opportunities, but the opportunity at HCS and ultimately Xerox and Conduent. But that turned out to be, again, a fantastic industry and experience. And what's interesting about Kelly is that it's a blend of all of that. We have a telecom focus, we have an education focus. Universal Technical Institute is career skills training, for-profit education, but career skills training focused. So there's an education aspect, there's skills aspect, and the workforce solutions elements of Kelly, where we're moving away from just purely placing jobs, people in jobs, and more about designing solutions to support our customers, which was what business services was all about. So really, that's brings it all together to where I am today.
I've looked at my career similarly. How do I take the experiences and how do they translate in that new environment? Even if, obviously there's always going to be things that are different and changed about it, but there is so much. And that's what I love about finance, is that so much of what we do is so heavily transferable, between different size companies, different industries, et cetera. You talked about early on, you were with a small firm and then you thought might be time to go join one of the big firms. How important has the brand recognition of the companies that you work with and the size of them been a factor for you when you think about your career?
I do feel like it was important for me, particularly early on. I went to a smaller school originally, joined a smaller firm originally, and those were the opportunities that were available to me. I did have an opportunity interviewing before I graduated undergrad with Price Waterhouse, again, another one of the big six at the time. but I would have had to wait. I went 4.5 years, and I would have had to wait until the following summer. So it was just a delay that I just felt like I wanted to get into the workforce and really get working, get my CPA. And so went with the smaller firm, but then realized, hey, I need to move back up the chain. Same thing with going to the University of Maryland to get my MBA. It was a top 25 program at the time, still a very well regarded program. So really trying to move into those bigger environments. And then what's interesting, I kept trying to go smaller, but then was acquired and went bigger again. So Nextel was smaller than MCI, but then combined with Sprint and was one of the top telecom companies. And then I went to ACS, which was $6 billion. So not a small company, but smaller, and then acquired by Xerox, and we became a $15 billion company. And then I went really small for the CFO role at UTI, which was a $300 million company. And we grew that to over 800 million, as I mentioned, and Kelly's somewhere in between. So I do think that has helped build skills, and then but also being in those smaller environments built skills you don't necessarily develop in the bigger environment. So I feel like I have a really nice blend.
When you look back, what are 2 or 3 of you think the most impactful decisions that you've made that have affected your career?
The number one by far, when I was at Xerox, there was an opportunity to join the corporate investor relations team 2 years, 3 years after the acquisition of ACS. And the Xerox corporate organization was all legacy Xerox people. And so they had acquired this business, which was transforming them more from a print hardware focused company that was under secular declines because people were printing less and less as technology became more prevalent, and moving into the services space and leveraging the global Xerox brand with this services portfolio they acquired through ACS. But they didn't have anybody in the corporate team, and particularly the outward facing investor relations, that knew the services business. And so I was able to come into that role and really educate Ursula Burns and Kathy Michaels, who's now the CFO at ExxonMobil, and the Xerox leadership team around the services business, and bring that lens both internally as well as to the investment community. And that really developed me, I think, with the core skills. I'd been in corporate FP&A, I'd been business partnership roles, but it really gave me that outside in lens, that investment community lens, that I think really better positioned me to become a CFO. So I look at that one as just the number one most pivotal, and I touched on a few others where making some decisions along the way, smaller to bigger in the transition. Even at Sprint Nextel, I received a call as they were going through that merger, and okay, we want to keep you in the organization. Most of my peers had been. We're not offered roles. We want to keep you in the organization, but we need you to move to Kansas City, and we need to know by tomorrow. And I thought about it long and hard. I talked to a bunch of different people, and I said, look, I want to be in the organization, but I don't want to move to Kansas City. And it ended up working out great. And again, I elevated into a bigger role. So there's been just a number of those type of moments, and everybody has them, of course. But for me, those were a few of the really impactful ones.
Is there anything you would have done differently?
I don't regret any of my decisions or the steps along the way. Certainly, I would love to have gotten to the CFO chair a bit earlier in my career. It was early 50s by the time I achieved the CFO role at Universal Technical Institute. When I took that IR role, I was already in my 40s. It was really a step down. I was a SVP, a business unit CFO for a multi-billion-dollar business unit, and I knew it was a transformative opportunity for me. But as I think about things I may have done differently, or ways I may have approached things differently, I always leaned hard on the technical skills and the hard work to differentiate me, and sometimes maybe the softer skills and the networking and relationship building I did, but maybe I could have done a little bit more, and I maybe wouldn't have had to work quite as hard and lean so hard on some of the technical aspects to get noticed and to advance my career maybe more quickly.
It's interesting you talk about the hard work, because sometimes people ask me, what's been key? And sometimes that's it. I say, if I didn't know what to do or how to get through it, I knew I could work really hard and figure it out. And so it was
Right.
just, put in that effort, and it's amazing what happens on the other side. You talked
Right.
about, a career path that's sometimes got zigs and zags, and certainly that's been my experience as well. I found early on, When I first came out of KPMG, I spent time in automotive. I then wanted to get into tech, which I had worked on technology clients at KPMG, but wanted to get in there. I did a similar thing. I took a step back in terms of the type of role, smaller company, different title, to then step forward. And I think we tend to always think it always has to be just this straight linear line up and to the right. But reality is it sometimes looks a little different, but it's sometimes those critical moments that are what help you eventually get where it is you're going. So
Yeah, agree 100%.
now let's talk about leadership and transformation, because you've driven a lot of transformative initiatives along the way. What do you think are some of the keys to effective change management?
I think you have to start with building an understanding of what problems you're trying to solve, what challenges there are. You have to develop a vision around that. Then, what the solutions are, and be committed to that vision. You have to lead with passion. You have to be a lot of conviction, because again, to the earlier point you made with career, any big transformative effort is not going to be a straight line either. There will be challenges, there will be setbacks. And so you really just have to have that passion and commitment to the vision of where you're going, and then work your way through those challenges. You need broad engagement across the team. It can't be just you driving it. You have to have your leadership team, and you have to have the organization, whatever organization that is, whether it's finance or a small team or the whole company, understanding the why and the where we're going, and how we're going to do it. And communication is just key. I mean, the fundamental element of change management is communication, and it's frequent and consistent and comprehensive, and building upon one another. There can't just be random communications that come out. They have to be linked and constructive, and bring people along the journey with you.
I totally agree. And I would say it's something I underestimated for a bit in my career. And in hindsight, I wish I'd elevated it in terms of its importance and realizing how it can help affect change management. I think as finance folks, sometimes we just think, well, I know where I need to go and I see why we're needing to do this.
Yeah.
And we forget to take the time because it feels like we're slowing down to bring people along and sometimes over communicating. But so it didn't come as naturally for me early on. Curious what your experience was on that and when it was you realized just how critical it is.
I've always been more of a communicator than not. The effectiveness of my communications has certainly, and how I communicate has certainly evolved over the years, introducing more brevity, more to the, what's think more from the person you're communicating with's perspective, those types of things. And certainly as you elevate from a leadership perspective, how you approach things, because now you're talking to many different levels of people in the organization, that will have different understandings around what you're talking about. So for me, it was more an evolution. Collaboration and communication have been one of my strengths, just as far as the importance of it. But like I said, maybe the effectiveness and how I approach it has really been where the evolution has been for me.
Now let's move on to our audience question segment. Here's the question. What is the best piece of career advice you've ever received? That's a tricky one because I've received a lot of great advice from a lot of great leaders and mentors. I'm going to go with listen more than you speak. It's so easy to want to jump in and share what you're thinking, but it takes patience to listen, and you really want to listen with intent. And when you do speak, you want to make it count. What has been your most difficult leadership moment?
Yeah, I had a really challenging situation. I'm not going to say what company, and I'm going to be a bit general, but I had a really challenging situation where a peer of mine and I didn't have a very constructive relationship, and it was more the other side than me. I know everybody will always say that, but there was clear evidence of that person undercutting me, and withholding information, and trying to turn team members against me, and even leadership against me. And but we had to work very closely together, and so it was a really challenging dynamic for me. I'm at this point in my career where it's like, well, what if this doesn't work out, and what am I going to do? And but persevered, continued to just take the high road when it was some of those situations became very evident. Continued to build my own relationships with the leadership team, with the team members, and ultimately, and because of his relationship with a particular senior leader, who was a bit untouchable, which furthered the challenge. But I stuck with execution and showing the value that I brought to the organization, and ultimately it was realized that hey, we need both of these team members to work in the company and to drive us to success. And there was some shift in responsibilities. Ultimately, I picked up more responsibility and eliminated some of those challenges, allowed us to work more independently. And it never perfectly repaired, but were able to move past it, and it ended up in as good a place as it could be.
Thank you for sharing that. It's always people, isn't it? There's some of the most
Yeah.
rewarding and sometimes the most challenging situations to try to figure out. Now, as finance professionals, we have to be both stewards of our business and strategic. And the further that you move away and you're starting to be strategic, sometimes you feel like you're losing touch with the what's happening in the business. And it's a tough balancing act to find and working through others. How do you find that you are most effective at being able to balance being in the know with what's happening, but also, staying where you need to and empowering others and being able to focus on being strategic?
I don't think we can ever get away from the details completely. And I think that, frankly, allows us to be more effective in a strategic role because we understand both the tops down and the bottoms up. And so I continue to look at, fairly detailed set of information, particularly as right now we're going through our earnings process, right? And so we have to be prepared to answer questions and understand all the nuances of the business. We have a very diverse business portfolio, as I mentioned, and a lot of nuances in the industry and the macro environment. And so there's a lot of information to process there. But ultimately, we're really taking both views, that tops down view and that bottoms up view, having metrics and reporting that enable you to at least scan the horizon to see where there might be some areas that you need to dig in. Certainly, we can't operate, to your point, at a super micro level of detail on a day-to-day basis, but knowing enough to be able to dig in when there's a challenge, when your team might be challenged and maybe struggling to work through something as it relates to transformation or other areas, and then really wrapping your arms around the business leaders, and staying back to your communication and collaboration points, the conversation we were having. That's another great way too. Is you don't have to look at the reports all the time. You also just need to be talking to people about what are they seeing, what are they hearing, both at a detail level and then more broadly around the markets and trends in their business and things along those lines.
It comes back to that communication as well. And I agree, to feel like we really have a grasp on what's happening, we have to have a certain amount of we're in the details, and having our team know what matters and that we're presented with the materials in ways that help us to feel like we're able to get that right level. And when you see something, certain things, bring me in and I'll get deep in those details as well when
Right.
I need to. And you really need to rely on your team to do that. And that takes building out a sense of understanding between both of you on when and where you need to have that happen.
Right.
Let's talk about AI. How do you see it changing the finance function and impacting the role of the CFO in the next several years?
Well, it's changing every function. So let's just start
True.
there. And it's really a transformative moment for all leaders, as we see here today. And I think I've been fortunate throughout my career. I mentioned that the telecom boom and the internet boom and wireless and some of the technology transformations that occurred during earlier in my career. And now here I am later in my career, and we have this next major transformation that's going on. And within finance we tend to be risk averse, and so I think there's quite a few, just based on the different forums and conversations I'm in, it's clear that there's a wide array of adoption across finance, but we tend to be a little bit behind where maybe some of the business teams are, certainly the technology teams. So, bringing people along that journey, everybody's learning at a different pace. And the other interesting thing about it is it's a very I could be an AI expert sitting here and you could not have done anything with AI because the tools are it's democratized. It's available to everybody publicly. And so that's the other really interesting dynamic around it is that finding the people in the organization who are already advanced, you just don't know about it. Because they're doing it on their own time or they're just doing it quietly in conjunction with their work. So getting those guardrails in place, getting that communication again is critical, and really building out a journey so that we can make sure that we bring the whole organization along. Those people that are maybe lagging, and harness the energy of those early adopters or those people who are really embracing it, so that we can bring the organization along and really identify practical uses. There's uses that will be fundamental to how we operate in finance. Our tools, our ERPs, our various other tools will be AI enabled. Those companies are working on their roadmaps and slowly embedding AI capabilities, but there's a whole array of other opportunities to leverage AI in just daily tasks, expanding our knowledge and capabilities of team members, driving productivity efficiencies in terms of how we do certain tasks. And so we're trying to wrap our arms around all of that, and just really elevate the visibility and communication around that, and then be able to measure how are we doing? What is the literacy level of the organization? Are we seeing the needle move? Are we seeing people's confidence level move? We asked in a survey, we talked about AI in my last town hall a few months ago. We do a post town hall survey, and we asked what the confidence level of the team members. And that was really the first time we started talking about it. We were focused on some of our earlier transformation efforts, and I didn't want to lead with AI. I wanted to lead with more blocking and tackling transformation, and then come back with AI. And so we started talking about it in September, and we asked what the confidence level was, and it was interesting. Only like 20% were highly confident, and maybe another 30% were somewhat confident, and everybody else was neutral to. It was a big neutral slice, and then 15% or so didn't have confidence that we could effectively implement AI across the organization. So that gave us a benchmark, a very recent benchmark that we're now working off of, to build that out. So we have to lead. We have to make sure the frameworks are in place, and it's going to be a really interesting journey, I would say, for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. It's an exciting time and we're all in it together. That's what's great
Right.
about it is that it's so new and we can come together both within finance, but across our whole organizations as we navigate our way through here. And even, when I
Yeah.
have conversations with others to see what they're doing in their businesses, I find that so helpful as we learn from one another. Now let's talk about, because you've had the fortunate position of mentoring lots of finance
Yeah.
talent along the way. How do you know when someone's ready for the next level? And what do you see differentiates people who end up being able to progress their career well?
There's a number of things to look for, and they're pretty evident when you see them. People who get the bigger picture, right? They're looking beyond just their immediate role. They're looking at their team members around them and understanding how it all, the inner workings of how it all factors together. They understand their business and the business counterparts, and they're building that understanding, right? If somebody who's more junior in their organization, but you're calibrating that to the level of the person. They're asking questions. They're always looking to learn more. They're driven. They do work hard. To your earlier point, they look to help others. They look to take on more tasks. And again, it's not necessarily that they're working 80 or 100 hours a week when other people are working 40 or 50 hours a week, but they're putting in that extra effort, and it's clear that they're looking for expanded opportunities and roles.
And if you had to give just one piece of advice to a young finance professional today, what would it be?
I would say strive to be more than just a numbers person, which ties to some of my other comments. Understand the business, understand and embrace technology, work on your soft skills just as much as your technical skills. Look for opportunities for leadership. Those are all, I think, critical building blocks for finance professionals today.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation and all your insights. You've really had a really interesting career, and I've loved learning about it and hearing your thoughts. Now, when we have guests on the show, we do have two rapid fire questions that we like to ask. So are you ready?
Okay, well, fire away.
Okay. The first one, what is the hallmark of a mature finance team in terms of how they operate?
I would say data and technology driven, collaborative, and strong business partnerships. Their respected advisors with the seat at the table, and people focused, strong talent development type pipeline.
And what is one book that has had a big impact on your career?
So I'm going to answer that a little bit differently. I'm not a big book reader. I haven't been of late, at least, and but I listened to a book recently on a long drive, and Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight story about Nike, and it was just fascinating. I like history, and I like to learn about how companies became what they are, and that one was just really interesting from just the creativity and innovation and determination they had early on, and of course the Michael Jordan era and just all the developments. They were originally just a running shoe company, and then of course became a global sportswear and athletic brand. So fascinating story, and there was a lot to learn from it.
I haven't read that one. I'm going to have to put it on my list. Troy, thanks again for joining me today. Really appreciate having you.
Thank you, Melissa. I really appreciate the opportunity again, and thanks to all for listening.
If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love your support. Follow the show and leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's one of the best ways to help more finance professionals discover us. For the CFO Show, I'm Melissa Howitson. Until next time.